Everyone, welcome to today's webinar on how digital should marketing be. I am happy to welcome today's speaker, Mr. Vikas Chawla and Dr. Vishal Talwar for today's webinar as well. So today's webinar is brought to you by DigiGrad, Social Beat and BML Munjal University. DigiGrad is an edtech startup by Social Beat, which is also one of the largest agencies in digital marketing in India. We are in an aim to empower students, working professionals, and entrepreneurs through various digital marketing courses and industry-ready programs. Happy to have been collaborated with BML Munjal University as well, which is founded by the Euro Group and mentored by Imperial College London. BMU is one of the biggest universities in NCR offering undergraduate and postgraduate courses, and it has a world-class and innovative teaching, learning, and a very good research environment as well. So coming to the speakers of today, introducing Vikas Chawla. He is the co-founder of Social Beat and DigiGrad. He has experience as a product head, digital head, and national brand manager at TI Cycles. He is also the alumni from London School of Economics and also the winner of UK Alumni Awards 2020. Welcome, Vikas. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Lavanya. Pleasure to be here.
And introducing Dr. Vishal Talwar as well, who is the Dean of School of Management in BML Munjal University currently. In the past, he was the head of campus Mumbai and assistant dean at SP Jain School of Global Management. And he's also been awarded the Outstanding Contribution to Learning and Teaching Award in Henley for recognition of his work. Happy to have you both here. Before I hand it over to you, just a small thing. If any queries and any doubts and any questions, please feel free to put it in the YouTube live chat box, and we will take it during the Q&A session of the program. Over to you.
Thank you, Lavanya, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Vikas. I think you and I go back a long way, at the London School of Economics, and it's great to kind of share the technically the podium once again.
No, absolutely. It's a pleasure is all mine, Vishal. I think it's great to share the stage with a professor of yours. So I think thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Great. So I'll just set the context a little bit. Obviously we're talking about digital marketing here. We're talking about a total transition that we're seeing from an implementation perspective, from a context perspective, from the exponential technological change perspective. But fundamentally, some of the things that we speak about as far as marketing is concerned, tend to remain, at least from a basic standpoint. You need to understand the fundamentals. You need to understand where we're coming from, where we're going, what's the history. Is actually important to become a better digital marketer, right? And many times you will notice that as you become better digital marketers, as you become great in what you do within digital marketing or whatever you want to call it, social media marketing, whatever profession you are, I think there are strong linkages with what marketing has seen over the last, let's say, 100 years. Of course, marketing, as a whole, as a concept or as a theory, essentially has been derived from economics as one of the, let's call it, the most practical application of economic fundamentals per se. Let's say from a demand and supply perspective. Over a period of time, marketing is dependent on sociology, marketing is dependent on psychology, marketing is dependent on many other areas became important too. So I'll quickly, talk to you about the basics. Of course, we shall be covering, things like how digital should marketing be, right? And of course, elements of building your marketing plan going forward. But for me, the idea is to set the context. The idea is to be able to ensure that to be able to plan for the future, we need to know where we're coming from. And that's fundamentally quite important for us. So when we talk about marketing, and many times you would have noticed, a lot of you may be marketers, a lot of you may be students of marketing, a lot of maybe professionals of marketing. The kind of terminology we use, the kind of metaphors we use, if you notice, are akin to this whole concept of warfare, this whole idea that, I'm pricing the product at something, somebody else is pricing the product, let's reduce the price, let's compete in the market, there's a competitor in the market, there's a challenger in the market, there's a leader in the market. All this kind of terminology does give you a sense that marketing warfare, or how we fight battles between equal armies, or how we fight battles when one army is small and the other army is bigger, all these terminologies and all these words and concepts that we tend to use have also been applied within marketing per se. Okay, so when you're smaller as an organization, when you're entering a market with lesser cash in your pocket, automatically your strategies will be quite different, right? Unless and until you are big, you have cash in the bank, you obviously will follow a very different kind of an approach. And fundamentally speaking, it's important for us to understand that marketing does not just rely on a warfare metaphor, but it also relies a great deal on metaphors, other metaphors that are used, let's say marriage, for example, right? So when we talk about relationship marketing, when we talk about managing customer relationships, when we talk about equality, and when we talk about buyer-seller being essentially the same, these are metaphors that we kind of derive from marriage as a metaphor. Okay, so automatically, these are concepts that we may need to understand as we go forward. But fundamentally, a lot of people, when I ask people, when I teach, when I'm part of discussions and when I'm, with students or with other faculty, we always come to this fundamental point about what marketing is. Is it selling? Is it advertising? Is it the cause of all evil? Right? I think I'm sure some of you actually wondered. Yes, marketing can be selling. So when I ask, people around, what do they say? The first thing they talk about is marketing is about selling, right? They also talk about marketing is about branding, marketing is about advertising. Yes, of course it is. So if you notice, selling essentially is one of the important outputs of what you do from, for a long period of time. So selling essentially is an output. Right? Advertising also is a way to be able to ensure whether it's the mind space you're creating, whether it's the brand space you're trying to create, whether it's the mind share that you're trying to create within the market. Are you trying to create a pull within the market? Of course, advertising has a major role to play, but something that you should be thinking about and getting clarity on, at least right now, is whether there are people out there, there are critics out there who talk about the fact that marketing could also be the cause of all evil. Right. So sometimes, this is obviously an argument that people can have, right? Why do they, call it that way? It's quite possible, people have made statements about, various things. They have said, marketing, may at times sell things which people don't necessarily utilize. They might, sell products which you might not find useful, but you've kind of bought it at a high price. It makes you buy, version 1 of a product, then it makes you buy a version 10 of the product, and it'll make you keep buying many versions of the products, right? So this whole idea of consumerism, right? This whole idea that to kind of be happy, you have to be able to buy the next versions of the various products, okay? And automatically, many a times, the more we don't think about, let's say, society and the impact on the environment or whatever else, the more we are kind of getting into that consumerist kind of a culture, we might also be creating certain impacts on the environment, right? Mind you, this is not necessarily marketing's fault, but how we implement certain principles, which then makes a lot of the difference. Okay. On the other hand, right, and something like on the other hand, you have campaigns like Lifebuoy. It's a famous campaign that Lifebuoy did in the last Kumbh Mela, right, which happens every 12 years, wherein they were stamping every one of their rotis with, did you wash your hands with Lifebuoy, right? So automatically, this was something that was a campaign which was a kind of a combination of creating certain brand resonance and at the same time reminding people about certain hygiene standards. Okay. On the other hand, you have campaigns which are around making you conscious about what you're doing. So fundamentally, you have to realize that marketing, the concepts, the principles, the ideas, the frameworks, the tools, the analysis, all this can obviously be used for various outcomes, right? It is up to us to discern what kind of outcomes they are. So fundamentally speaking, if you go back to the roots of what marketing is predominantly about what I, at times call the agency theory, right? There's this whole idea that you are obviously very much more sophisticated. So as a digital marketer, as a traditional marketer, as a brand person, you're far more sophisticated. But fundamentally, if you look within, right? If you look within into what kind of things that you're actually doing, right? You quite possibly you are something, far more advanced, let's say, than what a fruit seller does, Okay, what does the fruit seller do? Right, and this has been covered for a long period of time. What does the fruit seller do? A fruit seller, especially when it's downtime, especially when it's not too busy, especially when competition is tough, what does that person do? He or she works with the product. He or she maybe shines them, maybe changes location, maybe changes the price, maybe shouts at the top of his voice. Right, so fundamentally speaking, the basic concepts of how you operate, right, those concepts are still relevant. Yes, we have moved on from what I would call as a goods dominant logic of marketing, right? So there's a concept of the goods dominant logic or a product dominant logic of marketing. Many times a lot of people have said that we've now moved on to a service dominant logic of marketing. Okay, which means that anything that you do, whether you sell petrol, whether you sell potatoes, whether you sell rice, or whether you sell banking services, right, you're essentially thinking of marketing, right, from a strategic point of view, from an operational point of view, from a tactical point of view, as a service dominant logic of marketing. Okay, it's not necessarily a new concept. It's been around for the last almost 20 years. But the idea here is it's a transition in your mind. Even though there's a transition in your mind, remember, fundamentally, marketing is about demand stimulation, right? You can stimulate demand for anything, right? For an idea, a product, a service, a person, a thought. Okay, so it's about stimulating demand. How do you stimulate demand? But it's not about just stimulating demand for once. It's about sustaining that demand over a period of time. Okay, so which means you have to be able to create exchange of value. You're able to stimulate demand for an idea, a product, or a service, but at the same time, you have to create a bit of an exchange of value for that idea, product, service, person, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so to create sustainability. Why do you think we have this whole concept of relationship marketing? Why do we have this concept of growing over a period of time with customers? Why do we have this concept of customer retention rather than just customer acquisition? These are all based on this idea that we have to be able to sustain our relationships over a period, create an exchange, not just once, not one discrete exchange, but a discrete exchange between a buyer and seller should sustain itself over a long period of time. Okay, now the context is different. And this is something that I was having a chat with someone else. Right, we are obviously operating in industry 4.0 kind of an environment. Okay, yes, there've been different industrial revolution. Industry 1.0, we are aware it was about the steam engine. It was about the first industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution was about mass production. The third industrial revolution was about microchips and computerization. The fourth industrial revolution was, is happening at this moment in time, wherein the big fundamental difference here, ladies and gentlemen, is that the first three revolutions were about, machines helping human beings do a better job. But the fourth industrial revolution is about, this fundamental change that machines don't necessarily need human beings for operating in a particular context. Okay. Context is quite different. We keep talking about machine learning, we keep talking about big data, we keep talking about IoT. You mix this up with biochemistry. You must have come across news coverage maybe in the past, in the last 1 year, which stated that people born after, let's say, 2011 could actually decide how long they would like to live. Okay, so automatically we obviously are moving to a world that is very, very different. Okay. But fundamentally, what you have to remember from a basic perspective, we have to understand where we're coming from. What concepts change? What don't necessarily change? So at the basic level, it's about demand stimulation. I don't want to get into more definitions of marketing. It's about stimulating demand for something. And then, of course, you create an exchange of value. And hopefully that value is exchanged over a period of time in a mutually profitable manner or a mutually sustainable manner. Okay. Now, to be able to do that, some core questions, whether you're a digital marketer, right, whether you are dealing with any aspect of marketing per se, this whole idea of analyzing needs, this whole idea of demand, when will the customer buy? Where will the customer buy? How, what kind of pricing, should I be setting? How do I promote? What kind of service levels do I provide at various levels? These are all fundamental questions which will never go away. Okay, and these are questions which will always remain, irrespective of what kind of implementation you do, what kind of channels you utilize. Whether in a world which is already seeing these inflection points. What you have to remember is that there was some data that I was reading the other day that in Japan the mobile page views went ahead of desktop page views even as early as 2010. Okay, and I can imagine now, any different part of the world, mobile page views will be much higher. So the inflection happened a long time ago, right? I'm not too sure about the exact data, but I would imagine there are certain parts of the world where the amount of digital spending is actually higher than traditional marketing spending. In India, it's possible. I don't know the data. Vikas can shed light on it, but it's quite possible that they're kind of neck and neck. And with situations such as now, like a COVID, for example, or more technological integration, for example, a change of behavior, for example, this can only get further advanced and further speedified, if I can call it that. So thanks very much for giving me the opportunity, and thanks very much for allowing BML Munjal University to be part of this particular session. Over to you, Vikas. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Vishal. I think 50 back right 10 years ago when you were teaching similar stuff back at LSE. So thanks for that lovely introduction. So I'm going to kind of take a segue from what Vishal was saying. And I think I totally agree with you that a lot of it is now pivoted to mobile. And in fact, we see that, as you rightly said, it's almost neck to neck, both in terms of desktop and mobile traffic. And in some industries, definitely the mobile traffic and mobile views are actually much, much higher than the desktop views. So there's a lot that's definitely happening. I think Professor Vishal, maybe you need to switch off your screen sharing. I think it's not letting me. Yeah, perfect. Great. So I'm just going to share my screen. So really about digital, I think where I really want to start out with is the fact that whatever Professor Vishal mentioned, I think that holds true even in the digital spectrum. But one key element that's definitely changed is that a lot of it today can be tracked. Everything that you talk about, right from the demand generation, who your customer is this kind of promotion working or not? Is this pricing working or not? You really have a lot of data to make that happen. So that really helps you track all of that really closely. So one of the things we closely track across many, brand startup companies that we work with today is what we call as the North Star metric. And for those who want to read more about it, I'm sure there are multiple links. There's one link right here. But a North Star metric is essentially a metric that brings together the revenue and the business. It brings together the value that a customer sees in your product and service, and also measures progress of that metric, right? So it's a metric that scales as your company scales. So it is an important metric to look at, and really before you start out on marketing, figuring out what your North Star metric needs to be is super critical. And in fact, when we work on the marketing plan and marketing strategies of brands, this is something that we work with them to figure out what is it that really matters to that business, to that brand, to that product. And that's how we start the marketing journey. And just to give you a sense, for a grocery app, for example, it could be the number of groceries they delivered on time. That could be the North Star metric. And making sure that they actually have both the number of groceries, which is the scale of that, and the delivery, on-time delivery of that order itself. Or if you look at Shopify, for example, they look at their North Star metric is how much time or how many minutes has somebody spent listening to music? What is the total amount of time? Of course, there are other metrics that lead to that, but that's really the North Star metric that they track. So they don't necessarily track all the inputs that come into it, but they do track what the final metric that it will eventually lead to and lead to success. Or if you look at someone like an Ola, right, they could actually have a dual North Star metric where they have one which is actually catering to users, which is number of rides taken or number of minutes that a user has ridden on the Ola vehicle. Or they could also have one which is towards their partners and driver partners, which could be what are the kind of earnings that they have had, because that's the success of both sides of their ecosystem as Ola. So what your North Star metric needs to be is something that you need to figure out, but hopefully this gives you a sense. And that's typically the first thing that we would recommend you do before you start on your digital journey and your marketing journey. Now, I'm going to actually, because we're looking at traditional marketing and digital, I'm actually going to stick to the 4 Ps that for many, many decades defined marketing, which is product, price, promotion, and place. And I'm going to use those same concepts to figure out and show you what has changed for the digital ecosystem. So when it comes to the product, a lot of it actually depends on making sure you have the right market fit. And to find the right market fit, you need to do a lot of research and speak to customers, understand what connects with your stakeholders, be it your partners, be it your suppliers, be it your customers, and really find that market fit. And one of the things we've realized working with all the digital partners, be it with Google, be it with Facebook, is a lot of times, the consumers that we think may not necessarily be the ones that are actually searching for it online or actually have the intent to buy those products online. And these are quick examples of that, right? When you look at these 4 categories, many of the answers would actually surprise you, right? In fact, 60% of all sporting goods shoppers that Google has been able to track are actually female, right? 45% of video gamers are actually relatively older adults. 40% of home good shoppers are male and not necessarily female, as many of us might think. And 60% of auto shoppers are actually female as well. So a lot of this data is available online. There are tools to help us figure this out. So we usually recommend that you don't give in to your bias as a consumer or as, based on your upbringing, based on what you have seen. It may not necessarily be true of today's world. The world has evolved and users have evolved, and I think that's really what we're seeing in some of these slides as well. Now, so never assume, right? And there is a ton of data available today, and there are ways to also go out there and do your first-party research to make this happen. Now, one of the things we recommend is to do a consumer research when feasible. It could be done online. It could be done through interactions with customers that it could be friends, family, it could be people that might have interest in buying such a product or taking up such a service that you're offering, and look at getting answers to some of these areas. For example, what is their category perception and user behavior and purchase behavior, right? How do they look at this category of products and services? How do they go about buying it? How do they evaluate it? Or, for example, what is the competitive analysis in the sense that which are the competitors that they are aware of, which brands that they are aware of, right? And how do they perceive each of those brands? Do they perceive, for example, Apple to be premium and Android to be affordable? What is the brand perception that they attach to those competitors, to those brands, and to those categories? And so on and so forth, right? So there are multiple things that you can bring together from a consumer research perspective. And there are obviously, there's SurveyMonkey, there's a whole bunch of tools out there today to help you create quick surveys. There's Google Forms. And really, you can use many of these tools to create surveys to really cull out that consumer research for your brand and for your product. Google Trends is one tool that we actually use. You can use Google Trends to understand what is trending, product A versus product B, what is really trending more. Is it Android that's trending more? Is it iOS? What is it, right? So you can really, depending on what product or service that you're in, you can actually use Google's data and understand what's really happening out there. And by region, you can look at it from India, from UK, from whichever region you are in and whatever you're looking at. And really about different areas. And for example, we were looking at this even from a social cost perspective, right? Even for social causes, you can understand, for example, mental health is top priority for many people. Is there an opportunity for you to create a product there, right? So that's really the kind of things that you can also figure out from Google Trends as well. Now, while we have not covered one important part of the product, which is really creating an amazing product, creating a product which fits in and has a market fit, customer and market fit. But that's really key as well. You need to build a product that consumers love, need to build a product or service that consumers have positive feedback about, because that's really the key to marketing as well. You need to be able to market a product which is great and amazing. And just to take an example of Professor Vishal's example of that fruit seller selling fruits out there. If his fruits are not good, whatever marketing he does is not going to work. People are not going to buy those fruits. So that's really one key element to keep in mind when you look at the product. But do use consumer research, do use the digital tools, and let your bias aside when you really design your product and look at who your consumer for that product is going to be. Now, the second, P that really comes into play, which I'm not going to spend too much time on, but it's pricing, right? And I'm not going to spend too much time on it because it really comes down to each product and each service and each industry. So the pricing and the way pricing works today is very, very different for very different industries. For example, if I'm the beverage industry trying to sell a beverage and competing with, let's say, all the healthy beverages as well as the colas and other drinks that exist, there's a lot of different ways you can price the product. But let's say I'm a technology product and I want to sell a SaaS product, then the pricing strategy there will be completely different. So I think depending on which industry you're in, really use your competitor research, use your consumer research to come up with the relevant pricing that really matters as well. So I'm not going to cover too much on the pricing, but move on to the next part, which is place. Now, place is something that in back in the day for marketing used to be the physical location. Today, of course, it's more about availability. It's more about convenience. And I'll share some examples of how that's been enabled in the digital ecosystem. Now, one thing that COVID did, of course, was that, of course, the initial times, the initial few months of April and May and June, a lot of it was about stockpiling and anxiety and really adjusting to that life. But today we have, really adapted to it, evolved to it. We are watching sports online. We are watching our friends' weddings online. We're really celebrating everything online. And that's really what's happening even to marketing and to retail and e-commerce as well. A lot of purchases are happening online, and that trend is definitely going to continue even in 2021 and beyond as well. Now, the key is really to have a great omni-channel experience, so right from having a great website to having a right customer service, all of that, right? Today, there are free tools to help you make those websites and make those apps. So the first row you see here, which is Weebly, Wix, and WordPress, are great tools to really build your website and launch it within a matter of a few days. And the ones on the right-hand side actually help you create apps. So Builder.ai and Buildfire and Ionic are great tools to really help you build great apps. And you can have multiple pieces. You can have your social media in place. You can have your contact center and customer care in place. So you really need an omni-channel experience because customers want you in different places. They want the physical store. They also want the e-commerce store. They also want the app. They also want social media. So you really need to be able to be there wherever your customer is. And again, depending on the industry, you could use many of these tools to build your online presence, build your omni-channel presence. And the mobile has obviously transformed the way that journey happens, right? Because people are using their desktops, they're using their laptops, they're using mobile phones. They may be using a WhatsApp e-commerce today. They're probably using the chat functionality. They're also using your e-commerce site. They're using your app. So there are so many different touch points. And that ability for them to shuffle between these touch points also makes the journey more complex. But there are tools out there to help you track all of this today. Google has some amazing tools, Google Analytics, but you also have many other tools to really help bring this journey together because the journey can be complex to track, but there are thankfully tools to help you track that effectively. And when it comes to e-commerce, of course, Shopify is the market leader in that space. There are almost about 10 million businesses around the world that trust Shopify for their e-commerce and many in India as well today. And you can actually go live and start selling your products through Shopify practically in a matter of days, right? Within 3, 4, 5 days, you can actually start selling. And that's the power of that omni-channel experience where if you are a traditional retailer and you want to start selling to your customers this week, you can, and it's not that difficult. Of course, you need product images, you need some basics in place, but you can actually leverage these platforms in a plug and play fashion to really have an omni-channel experience. So that entire notion of place has definitely transformed over time. And I think consumers have also begun to purchase more things using Dunzo, using Swiggy, using Shopify, and direct to consumer brands as well. Yeah, and many brands have apps. Many brands have actually used apps and Shopify to really bring that to life as well. Now, one of the other things we've actually started to see is that people are also selling directly on Instagram or WhatsApp as well, right? It's not necessarily only on a website. So brands that do not want to invest that time or energy into building a website can actually even do it directly. And we are also seeing this is becoming an interesting channel of sales channel. So this becomes your place. So in fact, WhatsApp or Instagram could also be a place of sale for you. And that transforms the way we look at traditional channels of sales as well. And WhatsApp has become this amazing channel to make that happen too. In fact, we have many retailers that we work with today where customers can just, have a WhatsApp video call, choose the products during the video call, pay for it online, and get the product delivered the same day. So their experience of going to a store, looking at the products, that is being transformed using WhatsApp video. And WhatsApp for Business, the WhatsApp video facility, I think is just early days for that, but we're seeing some amazing traction from that, especially for offline retailers who may not necessarily have a lot of customers walking in, but they're using WhatsApp as a way to get customers to interact with their products, with their store, and with their salespeople at the store. So there's a lot that's happening with regards to place. The omnichannel experience, is something that really matters, and it's important to continuously look at how are your users, your customers going to access your products and services, because that's really a key way to make marketing happen. Now, coming to the last part, which is the promotion or the awareness part. Now that's where we spend a lot of time, and I personally have spent the last 10, 11 years being in that space of being able to promote a product, building that awareness for that product, and I think we'll spend some time on that. And in many ways, even the example that Vishal took of Lifebuoy at the Kumbh Mela, it's just pure storytelling. It's a form of telling a story that connects with the audience. It's a form of telling a story that's able to really bring together the brand, the product, and the connect with the consumers. And that's really what marketing still is all about. And I'll show you some case studies and examples of how brands have successfully done that as well.
Do you think India is gender equal?
Yes.
Do you help in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Do you know the name of this dal?
Yeah. No. There's no. A1 minute. Yeah, A1 minute.
No worries.
This is not arhar. Okay. This is.
We have come a long way when it comes to gender equality, but have we really moved away from what was once known as a man's world? Let's find out. What do you feel about gender equality in India?
Yeah, it's definitely a gender equality country.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Equal, I will suggest.
Yes, same.
Lovely.
Why not? Both are equal, men and
Exactly.
women. What I do is I sit in women's seat and don't get up to make it seem a equal society.
So tell me something, at home, who does most of the cooking?
So it's like it's not like mama always does all the cooking.
Right.
So it's like me also making Maggies for her sometimes.
You also making Maggie for her,
Yeah.
huh?
I'm definitely not qualified or skilled enough to help in the kitchen. I know the cooking,
Then
from chicken biryani, anything.
So, this is... What do you think? Tur dal.
It's called Hindi dal.
Hindi dal?
This is dal only, but then I don't know. This is also dal, of course, different.
We make sambar, so these are some of the leaves that we can drop into it.
It must be leaves of that dal, perhaps, you know.
Leaves of the dal. If I have 1 katori of rice, how much water will I need to cook it?
2 glasses of water.
Some finger measurements like this much of something water should be there, something like that.
How good are you at breaking an egg and putting it in the pan without spoiling the yolk?
See?
Try to make it like this.
So although I do think that we're definitely inching towards a more gender equal society, cooking still remains to be quietly a gender bias, knowingly or unknown. So for everyone who has realized this, here's a gentle reminder from Wonder Chef. Dear man, hold the pan. Trust us, it's about time.
We pledge that we will try to be more gender equal.
We pledge to make India gender equal.
I pledge to make
India?
I'll pause it here, but there were two reasons why I showed this. One was, this is a campaign which doesn't necessarily blatantly promote the product. It is a subtle sell, but there is obviously a connect with food and Wonder Chef, which sells cookware products. But the second is also the fact that often we get asked, is digital only about stories which are really short? Should you only tell a 10-second story or a 20-second story? Not necessarily, right? As long as the story is engaging, as long as what you're showing is interesting for users, they're still going to consume it and watch it. In fact, this campaign, even though it has a long video attached to it, we had a series of social media posts which were crisp, short, simpler, which took that message forward. And overall, the campaign was able to communicate the fact that men need to have an equal place in the kitchen. And this was something that got reiterated again, obviously, during COVID. And that's the campaign that we did for Wonder Chef. So it's really coming down to how can you connect the brand, the product, and something that connects with the consumer. And a lot of the times it is about keeping the brand at the center of it and keeping the product out of it, as long as you're engaging with the audience. And this is one of the concepts that I like to bring in here, which is full funnel, right? It's really about driving people from top of the funnel, which is the awareness, all the way down to them really taking an action, them purchasing a product or purchasing your service. And obviously you have multiple things that go into it, right? From video campaigns to social media, to influencer marketing, to really then getting them to walk into your store or inquiring or buying a product. And typically most brands, when they launch for the first time or they launch a new product, awareness becomes a big part of what they do before they move down towards the bottom of the funnel. And video has been growing, and it's only been accelerated due to COVID. But 75% of all data that's consumed in India is actually already video. And that's why video continues to be a big lever of, it's a lever that really makes sense to use for digital. So I love this video from hotels.com. It's very smart, subtle. It's funny at the same time. It works well even without audio. And that's a key insight to keep in mind, especially for Instagram and Facebook, because many of the campaigns and videos that are there on Facebook, they require sound to be switched on to understand the video. But often, many users do not have their audio switched on. So you have to either adapt your video and campaign towards that channel or find a way to make a different video for that channel. So whereas on YouTube, for example, people do switch on audio, watch it completely. Whereas if I'm on Instagram or if I'm on Facebook or if I'm on Twitter, I may or may not have my audio switched on at that point in time. And which means each platform, even though you're using video as an awareness tool, needs to be looked at very differently for each channel and for each way to do it. So this is a campaign that we did where we actually really took the fact that you wouldn't do these things in the office. So why do you do it on the road? They used this as a way to do a road safety awareness. And I'm showing you different kind of case studies because to promote road safety and do it in a funny way, but at the same time send the message across is something that's often hard, but that's still possible as long as you have a great story to tell, as long as you have a great insight of what consumers would connect with and engage with. And while some of these videos may be more expensive to create, there are great free tools that are listed here. The left-hand side, in fact, are official tools that Facebook recommends, which are free to use. And the one on the right-hand side, Animoto, InVideo, and Fiverr are actually videos that we actively use, video tools that we actively use to create quick, fun videos that you can use on the digital front. So videos, yes, can be expensive, but there are now affordable ways to make that happen as well. Now, few things to keep in mind when it looks at video and creating awareness is that less is usually more unless you can tell a really great story. And on digital, capturing their attention in the first few seconds is super critical. That's something that you really need to keep in mind. Design for sound off, which I mentioned earlier, right? Make sure you're able to communicate whatever you want to communicate, even if the user has not switched on their audio. Build for each channel, which is on YouTube, most users actually watch it on the rectangle form, whereas on Instagram, a lot of them really hold the phone straight and tap their stories or scroll through the feed. So there it needs to be more vertical. So each channel has their own nuances. And often we also build different kind of content and videos for each step of the funnel. So if you're creating awareness, maybe there's a different kind of content required. Whereas if you want somebody to purchase a product, maybe there's a different kind of communication required. And finally, make sure you're building a connect using the kind of video and content that you're really creating. So these are some quick tips. I think we could actually have a whole session just on videos, but hopefully these quick tips hold good for you guys when you create some videos for your brand. Now, social media as well is a great tool to actually build awareness, and we'll spend some time talking about that. While to a large extent, Instagram and Facebook still lead that pack, you of course have LinkedIn, Twitter, even WhatsApp to some extent is a quasi social media, even though it's more for messaging, but a lot of companies today also use it as a social media app to really send out messages and communicate and engage with users. And the key there is how you use social media to do three things. One is to simplify that experience and make sure you're creating something which is easy to understand, because users spend only a few seconds looking at what you're showing them. Could be 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. Second is tell a story that connects your brand as well as the product, right? That integrates whatever your product is and whatever your brand is. And finally, use it as a way to find new audiences as well as engage with existing audiences that you may have on your channel. Now, on social, obviously the image is what's required, right? And Facebook, in fact, did a complete study on this along with universities in North America, where they really made users look at the image that I just showed you for a fraction of a second. And they asked people to identify what they saw. And almost 85% of the users were able to identify key elements of this image, even by seeing it for less than a second, right? For looking at it for 13 milliseconds. Now, that's really the power of images and visuals. And that's something we keep in mind when we create social media campaigns and social media, visuals. So this is an example of what we did for an insurance brand, where we really talk about protection, but in a very, very different way, in a way that stands out and helps the brand capture their attention and make users stop for those 3, 4, 5 seconds. Or even for a healthcare player, right? For a hospital chain, Narayana Health, we actually took Valentine's Day and said, hey, can we do something for Valentine's Day? And they said, hey, we've never done anything for Valentine's Day. But there's always an angle that can be different, an angle that can be unique. And in this case, it was about loving yourself, about taking care of your body, taking care of your health, using that angle for a hospital and a healthcare chain. And staying relevant is key on social as well. And Tesco, which is a supermarket chain, actually did this really, really smartly across the world, where they realized that there were a lot of first-time grocery and vegetable buyers who are coming in both to their website and to their physical stores. And they said, are there ways for us to actually simplify for them to see what each product looks like? What does cinnamon look like? What does clove look like? Because a lot of people, including me, for a long time did not know how to do this because we never went shopping for groceries and vegetables, probably until COVID hit. And staying relevant is there's so many examples there for each industry. This is again for the app that I was showing earlier, which is called Olio. It's an app that helps you manage food and manage food waste, and they find different interesting ways to connect with their audience. And each channel again here is unique and different, right? Instagram will be very different compared to a Facebook, compared to a Twitter, and compared to a YouTube. And again, you need to keep these nuances in mind. Many of these tools have great resources for this. Instagram, in fact, has a whole creator series that helps you understand how can you create content that can engage with your users. So go check out creator tools, creator resources that they have to get a better sense of this. A lot of polls, different things that you can do on Instagram. Move on. And there are other ways as well, right? There are stories now on that you can create. There are stickers. You can go live on Instagram. There are 3D or depth effects that you can create on Instagram and Facebook. So there's so much innovation that they keep bringing. They've launched Reels recently. So there is always a scope to figure out, okay, what can I do differently? What can I do new on the platform so that users engage with me for that additional few minutes and few seconds every day. And brands are trying different things. Insta stories, for example, this is for one of the whey protein brands that Himalaya has. Finding a way to engage with consumers, even if they're not stepping out of home, because it's a fitness brand, they had to find a way to also engage with their users at home. Now, a lot of what I said is actually, you can get organic reach or reach without actually investing money. But let's say you do have some funds, you do have option to leverage paid media. Today, you can actually have a lot of paid awareness that you can create through many channels. And Google and Facebook, again, top the charts here. They are the ones that actually have a lot of leverage here, a lot of things that they do. I'm going to pick up pace in the interest of time. Now, when you look at paid advertising, there's a lot that you can do, both in terms of hobbies and interests that audiences have, as well as the intent that they have. Do they want to buy a product? Do they want to buy a mutual fund? Do they want to buy a mobile phone today? So that intent combined with interest that they have can really make targeting using paid media very, very powerful as well. Now, and even through paid media, you can actually personalize communication. So this is an example of what we did for one of our mutual fund clients, where instead of saying invest in mutual funds, we said, hey, let's look at what goals people have. Some people have goals of traveling. So we said, let's say, hey, to start planning your next vacation, why don't you start saving money? Or for people who are going to retire, who are in the age of 55, 58, 60, we said, hey, why don't we tell them, let's start saving so that you have a healthy retirement and a retirement where you can do what you want to do. So instead of selling a mutual fund, we said let's really leverage the goals that they have and go after people who are looking for those kind of goals and really connect that back to creating personalized communication. Now, the other aspect of content marketing is partly done on social, but also partly done on Google, where you really create amazing content. And if you look at Google today, Google essentially ranks various content, right? You have 10 results that you see, and each of these 10 have amazing content that's researched. It has in-depth content from that website, and creating amazing content is one way to also leverage Google and Google's strength to get people to your website. And often it's about finding that sweet spot between what you want to say as a brand and what consumers are looking for. Because if you can find that sweet spot between these two, then that's really where content marketing can also play a huge role. For those who are really interested in content marketing, there's an amazing study done by BuzzSumo and Moz, which are two global tools. You can actually look for this report online, and you'll actually understand what kind of content really works, what doesn't work, and use that to really rank on Google to get people to come to your website. And obviously that's free because Google doesn't charge you for their organic listing. So you actually can get a lot of free traffic by leveraging content marketing. So I'm going to skip through this in the interest of time. So this is the last part of what I wanted to share really was, which is what I started off with, is you have a North Star metric. You figure out a product, place, pricing, promotion, you build awareness, you use digital, you use social media, and then you really measure all of this to see whether this is all leading to the North Star metric that you have put down for yourself. And when digital started out, a lot of it was really about likes, comments, people coming into my website. But over time, it's really been about the kind of impact it creates, the sales and revenue that it creates, the inquiries that a brand generates, and of course, what kind of reach and engagement you can create as a brand. And you can actually track at each part of that funnel. You can track, obviously, inquiries and sales at the bottom part, but you can also do brand lift studies and other studies to understand how are more and more people aware of my brand today than they were, let's say, before I started my marketing. Right? And depending on what you want to track, whether it's sales or brand, you can actually track those differently as well, depending on what you want to track. And today there are amazing tools to make that tracking happen seamlessly as well. Yeah. So I'm going to pause here. I think we may not have the time for the case study. So maybe Lavanya will take some questions, and if we still have time, we can definitely circle back to the case study if you can. So Lavanya, do you want to shoot out some questions? Maybe Professor Vishal can take the first ones. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much. Yes, so we have a question from Priya on how is this whole digital marketing transition important for small businesses, especially in Tier 2 and 3 cities? So if you could throw some light on that.
Professor Vishal, would you like to take it, or should I take it? No.
No, I think there'll be a lot of traction now going forward on in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, in my opinion. And the reasons are related to technological proliferation, are related to behavioral changes from a COVID perspective, are related to socioeconomic conditions. With the fact that a lot of us are now being able to work from home, I think that'll be a fundamental reality for a lot of people, irrespective of whether COVID exists or it doesn't. Right. So whether it's sustainable, whether it's profitability, whether it's work-life balance, whatever you want to call it, I think that more and more organizations will explore that possibility. Right. Whatever the outcome, whether good or bad, a lot of them will explore that opportunity. Having said that, what you'll also notice is that people might have PwC and EY and BlackRock on the name cards, might also have let's say, for example, based in Kolhapur or based in Pondicherry or wherever else, right? And fundamentally, that's also this whole idea of work from home. So what I'm basically saying here is that technological change driven by behavior, driven by work from home, driven by COVID, will lead to a lot of what I would call as exit for a better quality of life, a better standard of living as far as homes are concerned. If you can buy, let's say, a 500 square feet flat, studio, BHK, or whatever you want to call it in Mumbai, that money might actually give you a far better standard of housing or whatever somewhere else. So I think that to a certain extent will be driven, and that will lead to a lot more consumption in those markets. So that's more longer term. But at the same time, remember that a lot of new models of innovation that are coming along are not just focusing on Tier 1 towns. Yes, there's a lot more clustering. There's a lot more extraction from the creamy layer, right? There's a lot more extraction because these are easier markets to identify. But then once you start, creating more depth, once competition hots up, once you become more contextualized, you will notice a lot more demand coming from Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4 towns. And automatically, if the demand is there, the supply will also come along. So I think digital marketing or otherwise whether it's business to business, whether it's business to consumer, you'll notice a lot more of this happening. This has to go obviously hand in hand with internet technologies, penetration, access, but that's also improving as we speak. There's 40% increase in bandwidth in broadband. What do you call them? Contracts or broadband requirement. There's been a 40% increase post March, right? And a lot of this may not just be within the tier 1 towns, right? It will be in the tier 2, tier 3 kind of towns. So I think both sides are now working. Demand and supply is working, and I think it's a matter of time where further increase of such requirements will go up. That's what my opinion is. Vikas, I don't know what you think.
No, absolutely. I think tier 2, tier 3 towns are seeing a massive jump across the board, like you said, right from work from home to e-commerce to people, even many of our team members who used to be in larger cities have now gone back, right? So I think there's a lot of reverse migration happening, and that's really going to change a lot of things when it comes to marketing as well. So I think you've covered a fair bit of that.
So next question is from Rakesh, which is, what is the marketing research that a brand should do when it decides to move from traditional to digital?
Oh, that's a great question. I think one of the things that we often recommend is, if you already have a customer base, try and understand their behavior online, right? Are they already buying from Amazon, for example? Are they used to buying through cash and delivery, or do they want to prefer prepaid models? So there are a lot of things you can figure out, both from a distribution perspective, from a channel perspective, and also from a perspective of, do they want specific products that can really work through the digital medium? So those are the kind of things that you would really start off with. But any consumer research that you do would apply even to digital or traditional. So I think that's the way we would look at it.
So yeah, absolutely. I think fundamentally, if your consumers moving online, right? If your target segments are moving online and they've transitioned, usually that is the case. I think usually companies lag in their change, right? It's the consumers who've gone ahead first. It's very few companies who are proactive in the transition. Most companies suddenly react to what? I mean, I think my consumers moved online. My 15 to 25-year-old target segment of certain demographic characteristics has already moved online. I haven't, right? So I think that's one of the first research. Where is the consumer? What is he actually doing? All that fundamentally is very, very important for you to do.
The next question is on apps itself. So with web apps providing almost a very similar experience to a mobile app, do you think mobile apps will soon be beyond consumers, or what is your opinion on that?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I mean, I didn't catch the second part.
Yes. So with web apps providing almost a very similar experience.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a valid question. I think a lot of the it comes down to two things for us. I think what we've seen is that a lot of users obviously find it easier to transact on the Chrome and Safari browser. So yes, you are right that a lot of it is moving towards that. But wherever you need frequent usage, wherever you need usage that's almost on a regular basis, daily basis, I think there we still see a strong use case for apps, because it allows you to have a much better user experience. It's much faster to load. Even many of the progressive web apps and web apps that you see on Chrome and Safari, they're almost there, but they can't match an app experience, right? So I think, yes, that gap will get bridged, but apps still hold good, especially in a category where you're doing usage on a daily basis.
So Asha wants to know what is how do you what is the context in terms of B2B space as well, in terms of digital transition? How does that apply, and how far should somebody go to customize their content in that way?
Yeah, I can start and maybe Professor can add on. I think B2B is transformed quite a bit, right? We've seen right from even traditional companies who are in the manufacturing space or export-import, we're seeing them using lots of platforms online where that interaction happens, where the quotations are sent, where product reviews are also there. So I think Alibaba has done this very well in China. We're also seeing India Mart, LinkedIn, and other platforms, even in the Indian context, really makes sense. There are also now B2B e-commerce platforms that have sprung up in India. So I think that entire ecosystem is nascent in India for the B2B space. But yes, it is happening. And I think COVID has only put that into an accelerated mode, because your customers, your partners, your prospective clients, they are looking for a product online. And that means you need to be there when they look for you, when they look for your product and service. So I think definitely early days for B2B, many companies are still finding their ground there, but your customers are already looking for it. So you better be there as well.
I would assume phygital is one avenue for a lot of business to business, in fact, business to consumer as well, because we have in India, there's a last mile issue, right? And of course, this whole idea of physical and digital merge will be important, irrespective of whether it's B2B or B2C. What do you think, Vikas?
No, absolutely. I think that's very true. And I think that's why a lot of brands, even e-commerce brands, now have physical presence, and physical retailers and traditional brands and B2B companies also have an online presence. And I think that line between what is that place, where do you transact, that line is very blurry today. Absolutely.
All right. So one last question. Not sure if this is specific, but Rushabh has a question on how much a marketer should expect ROI in the consumer market in the coming 2021.
I think it depends on what product are you into, what service are you into. The fact is that certain sectors have suffered. Certain sectors are operating at 10-20% capitalization. Certain sectors, hotels, for example, a lot of a lot of budget chain hotels, a lot of these guys, especially the ones who've become really big, a lot of them, will take some time. It's all linked to travel. It's all linked to behavior. Whereas the other sectors, the automotive sector, it's more pent up demand. So there was some demand that was there pre-COVID. But having said that, we also noticed that more people prefer having personal transportation because of COVID or whatever reasons. And I think maybe it'll reverse after the vaccine comes out. But the fact is that there is now demand for motorbikes. There's demand for smaller cars rather than the bigger cars. So you'll notice that. So of course, the ROI there would be quite different. Health and healthcare will be quite different. So e-commerce will be quite different. So it's very difficult to put a number to, it depends largely on the kind of industry. So you would notice education, you would notice education in certain forms, not necessarily, in all its forms, having a good amount of growth and traction. You would notice healthcare, medical services growing a great deal, personal transportation growing to a certain extent, a lot of consumer services growing a great deal. A lot of disintermediation, might happen. And of course, re-intermediation as well. So I think you'll just change who's your provider, because you can't go out as much as you possibly can. So it's difficult, depends on the kind of industry you belong to, which then looks, is about ROI then. But certain sectors will do well. I think agriculture, to a great extent, the basic stuff, the essential commodities, a lot of all that will definitely get a fillip.
And yeah, we're all hoping for a new year and with new opportunities, and let's hope for a good year for marketers as well. Thank you so much for the time from both of you. I'm sure a lot of insights you have gained for marketers who are right now planning for their marketing mix, and people who have already done that and looking for more new things in digital as well. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
No, thanks, Professor Vishal, and thanks, BML Munjal, for joining us today as well.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, Lavanya. Thank you, everybody who's joined it. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.